Hello, and welcome to 3C Money Matters, a podcast for clients, colleagues, and community. I'm Alice Zalman from the 3C Group of Baird, and alongside me today are my teammates, Dan Matthews and Lauren Snyder. Fellas, how are you guys this morning?
Doing great. Looking forward to hearing what Allison has to say.
All good. Looking forward to catch up with a friend.
Well, appreciate you guys being here alongside me. We are incredibly excited about our guest for this morning's episode, Dr. Allison Barber, who is the CEO of To the Hoop Strategies and chair of the Marvella Foundation. Allison has an incredibly interesting background and career that spanned from the schoolhouse to the White House and then the field house. She started as a grade school teacher in Merrillville, Indiana, went to D.C., became a communications strategist in the White House, was with the United States Department of Defense, and from 2019 to 2024, Allison was the COO and president of the Indiana Fever, where she helped grow the team's fan base both nationally and globally, leading to record ticket sales and a meteoric rise in public interest in the WNBA and women's sports. Allison, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Well, if you've listened to our show before, our listeners will know that the goal of this podcast is to provide content that maybe helps inform, maybe entertain a little bit, but backs up our team's mission to be a great teammate to clients, colleagues, and community, something, Allison, I know that's a staple of your day-to-day work. So with that in mind, to have a little bit of fun, help our listeners get to know you a little bit, the first question we ask every guest is, what is your favorite movie and why?
That's a great question and a tough one. But if I had to just pick one, it would probably be The Sound of Music. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think it depicts life in its best moments and life in its toughest moments. And the thing that gets you through both the good and the bad is your resilience and character and drive. So it speaks to me on lots of levels. And I'm a fan of Julie Andrews, so what's not to love? And more importantly, I did win runner-up 3 times in the Sound of Music sing-along, where in the theater you would dress up in costume and then go up on stage. And I don't put this in my bio because I don't want to brag, but I was runner-up with my friends. We went as the hills that were alive. I got a big green sheet and we sewed mountaintops in the sheet. And 6, 7 of us were in there with our faces cut out. And we would stand up and sing The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music. And we had hangers in the top of the mountain peak. And so we would shake it. People were pretty excited about that. We basically became the backdrop for most of the photo ops the entire night. But anyway, maybe I should move that to the top of my resume. I don't know. You guys can tell me if you're impressed or not. But that's my claim to fame.
I think that's very fair. And if you would like Dan and I to sing The Lonely Goat Herder, we can do it. It's up to you. As a complete aside, Allison, something you might be interested to know, in Mason City, Iowa, which is the birthplace of the world's apparently most famous puppeteer, they have the puppets from the Lonely Goat Herd scene of The Sound of Music. You can go see them in a museum, and they are incredibly creepy in person.
Yeah. But now we're really off track. But once I was hosting Julie Andrews at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. She was at my table, and so I asked her if she'd ever been to the sing-along Sound of Music. And she said no, but she was just itching to sneak into the back of the theater and hear the crowd sing. And I thought, oh man, people would go berserk if they knew they were singing in front of Julie Andrews.
Did you come runner-up to the same people every time?
No, it's a good question. No, because I was in Chicago for one and in D.C. for the next 2. I'm still kind of cranky about it. The people that won bought their costumes. So it's a little bit, unfair. I'm working through it, though. You can tell.
Right. Processing it.
You might be the first people to ever know that story. So, I don't talk about that too often, but you got me started.
What an honor. Breaking news here on 3C Money Matters. Well, Allison, shifting gears just a bit, from our perspective, you've just had an incredibly fascinating life and career. I gave some background in my initial intro, but just tell us a little bit about your background and some of your experiences and career trajectory.
Well, I've been super blessed. I try to really think through principles that I believe in. I think there's one that comes pretty clear through scripture that says, to whom much is given, much is required. And I can't think of anybody who's been given more than me. So, brought up by wonderful great-grandparents who were immigrants to Gary, Indiana, because they wanted to create a better way for their family. They came from the Middle East. We are Assyrian, so we're an extinct nationality. Not too many more of us left, but they had a vision to create something good, it's like so many people do. And they moved to Gary, Indiana, and they worked hard in tough jobs and steel mills and just created a pathway of demonstrating that hard work pays off. I think that might be kind of the through line here is hard work pays off and doing good work. So growing up in Northwest Indiana, of course, I played basketball in my driveway like every good Hoosier. It's my favorite sport. And spent a lot of time with family and friends, just having a really blessed upbringing. And that led me to a great college in Chattanooga to become a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My dad was in education. He worked in construction management for Moody Bible Institute and then Ball State. So both parents, big believers in education through different pathways of giving people opportunity that education really does, unlike anything else. So I became a teacher, moved back to Indiana to teach. And my husband, grade school sweetheart, actually, and I got married, and the first Gulf War broke out, and he wanted to serve the country. So we both quit our jobs. He joined the Army. We ended up in D.C. and stayed there for 20 years and had just so many great opportunities, working for the American Red Cross under the leadership of Elizabeth Dole, and then being tagged to go into the Bush administration, and went to the Pentagon before 9/11. So I was there in May of 2001. And then just went shoulder to shoulder with some really great civilians, political leaders, and military members as we navigated the tragic attacks of September 11th and then the aftermath, and really trying to build out a path for Americans and support for the troops and their families. So all of these things, just at every turn, just so blessed to be with good teams and connected to great missions. And then Mitch Daniels, every time I would see him, he'd say, "Don't forget to come home. If you stay in D.C. too long, you'll forget what the real people think." And so in 2010, my husband and I moved home, and I started WGU Indiana, per Mitch's request, our state's nonprofit online university. Again, just such a good mission, giving people the opportunity to improve their lives through education. And then on a Friday, I got a cold call from the CEO of Pacer Sports Entertainment saying, "Would you come talk to me about being the president of the Fever?" And that was a big pivot. I was a college athlete, softball and tennis, but never really pursued a job in sports. So this was new. But again, it was tied to a good mission, promoting girls and women and helping people see a pathway through sports that opens a lot of doors. So I think that, it's work hard, connect yourself to a mission that is important and that you believe in, stay curious. All these things kind of have helped me traverse through this, really blessed life of hoping and trying hard to give back and contribute to people around me. And now the board chair of Marvella, which is we're creating the country's first girls sports and leadership complex. Again, another great mission of helping girls become the best version of themselves. That's probably the thing that motivates me the most, is how do we work hard to help people succeed? And that's probably the way to bookend my fabulous and wonderful and blessed career.
Wow. Can I ask, were you actually at the Pentagon on 9/11 during the attacks?
I was actually in a plane flying to Atlanta that morning. It's kind of surreal. I got up early that morning. It was a beautiful, cloudless sky, and we took off for Atlanta. I was going to Atlanta to meet with an ad agency. We were working on a new ad campaign to encourage more people to serve in the military. And when I landed, I took the underground tunnel. I got into the office at the Tower building, and that's when I found out the country was under attack. So I rented a van. The only thing available was a 15-passenger van, and drove back and got back to the Pentagon the next morning before President Bush came to visit the site and thank the volunteers and first responders. But what was really surreal to me is we went from working on a campaign to get more people to join the military to the day after 9/11 to recruitment numbers going, beyond belief, and people lining up outside of recruiting centers to serve the country. So this, it's a really interesting moment to see the transition of the human spirit and psyche to say, no, this, in the worst moment, the best people step forward.
We do want to talk more about the Fever and the Marvella Foundation as well, but I'm also interested to know from a teammate perspective. You spent some time in the White House as a communication strategist. I've watched The West Wing. It seems like that would be chaotic. Can you tell us a little bit? What's a day in the life of a communication strategist in the White House like?
West Wing was actually pretty good. And I'll give you a little side story, if that's okay, about West Wing. So at the Pentagon, I was actually, one of my departments was kind of the Hollywood liaison department. So every department has someone that helps movie writers, television writers just keep the story, not write the story, but just keep it authentic. So you have the right uniform and you're calling people by the right name. And so I had a team of folks that worked on all of the scripts. And before I was in that job, the story goes that they were going over the script for West Wing one day. And in the script, they had bagels in the White House. And Dee Dee Myers, who worked for President Clinton, was an advisor to the script writers. She said, "Oh, no, that's not accurate. We never have bagels in the White House." And they said, no, it's the 80s. Everybody has bagels in every meeting. She goes, no. You can't use taxpayer dollars to buy food. It's against the rules, which is actually true. Well, the Aaron and the writers didn't believe her. So she reached over and she calls George Stephanopoulos, who's still at the White House, on speakerphone. She said, "George, how often do we get bagels in the White House?" He said, "We never get bagels in the White House." So they took it out of the script. So they worked hard to keep West Wing pretty authentic. It's also why if you worked in the government, you were always happy to go to the other person's office for meetings, like the corporate offices, because they would have cookies. You never got to have cookies at the Pentagon because you can't use taxpayer dollar for your own food. So which is good. They shouldn't. So West Wing was pretty close. What was different about working in the White House is everything, every meeting, the seriousness and the weight of every meeting and every decision was different because the world watched your work, so that was new and different. And also we could create a strategy and say, we're going to focus on, one day we just decided we would focus on the women of Afghanistan. Like, how do we tell the story of the women in Afghanistan? And the minute we crafted that story and Mrs. Bush got involved and the trajectory, and then it became an international story. And so, the good days were great because you really did have this amazing podium that was a global audience. And the tough days were really tough for the same reason. But every day was different, but very focused and challenging too, because no matter how many things you were doing proactively, you were always dealing with also the negative spin and, the way things were portrayed. So you were playing offense and defense constantly. And it was hard. We talked a lot about focusing on the important and then letting the press people focus on the urgent. And so when you're a communication strategist, I was never in the story every day combating whatever that was the press person's job. They handled the urgent, we handled the important.
Yeah. Well, Allison, you referenced a book end to your career. No chance you're done writing chapters. I certainly hope you're not. And I'm excited to see what your next chapters yet to be written and how they read. So
thank you.
You're not bookended yet. No
Not
way.
Not yet. Maybe I'm just going to leaflets though, instead of book chapters.
Would you say far? You've got a long, long way to go.
Nice.
Very well done. Allison, this is fascinating. We could spend all day talking with you, but I know all of us here on this call are big Indiana Fever fans. Lauren and I are season ticket holders to Go Fever.
Thank you.
But you obviously presided over the Fever during what an incredible time. There was meteoric rise in fan interest, global interest. Caitlin Clark was drafted. Would you just mind sharing what was that like to be a part of?
Yeah. It's interesting. You and I were just reflecting on how on 9/11, we were writing an ad campaign to get more people to serve the military. And then overnight, the human behavior changed. The two examples are extreme in reference, but human behavior is the same. So, prior to Caitlin Clark, we were working hard to build fandom and support and keep the brand relevant. And then we drafted Caitlin Clark and human behavior changed. And so, but you have to do those first pieces to be able to be ready for the Caitlin Clark transformational moment. If you don't have your team in place, if you don't have the structure in place, then it's fleeting and you can't sustain that energy. And so it was very exciting. We got the first pick. That was exciting. You have to have the grit and the, resilience to wait for those moments, because the way you get a first pick is that you have, the best chance of getting the first pick is by losing a lot. And we got the first pick 2 years in a row. So those seasons were hard, and it was hard to keep my front office team motivated and encouraged. We worked a lot with a fan of self-determination theory, which talks about how do you motivate people, and it's through autonomy and competency and relevance. Like, there's really a science behind motivating people during the down times. And so we worked hard at that. So we were ready. But we've got the first pick, so that was exciting. But then we didn't know if Caitlin was going to use her fifth year or go into the W. when she announced she was going to the W, our phone started ringing off the hooks. You know, I mean, it was unbelievable how many people wanted to be part of Fever Nation, and we were grateful. We had hundreds of season ticket holders who had been around with our team franchise for 20 some years. So they rode the ups with Tamika Catchings winning the championship. They were there during the lean years. So I'm always grateful to the anchor fans. And then we were really energized by the newness of the fandom. And somebody from Nike taught me this. They said the difference, what Caitlin did for women's basketball is similar to what Tiger did for golf in this way. So I stayed away from all the comparisons. Everybody wanted me to compare Caitlin to somebody. I'm like, Caitlin is Caitlin. No comparison needed. But I thought this science actually made sense. Tiger brought new fans to the game of golf. So a lot of great athletes will bring energy to their team or their sport, but it's typically people that already liked football or swimming or tennis. Caitlin brought new fans to the game of women's basketball. And so that is a distinguisher that I think we've watched happen across every demographic, you know. And I was at a luncheon. It's unbelievable. I was at a luncheon a few months ago. The woman sitting next to me, it was going to be her 90th birthday. And I said, oh, well, what is it that you're hoping for your birthday? She goes, no, I already got it. I asked my family for a Caitlin Clark jersey. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. That would not have happened a few years ago, but we're grateful and excited. So it's good for our city and state. It's good for girls and women, and it's good for the sport in general. It's very exciting.
I want to interject here and say, I don't think I was an anchor fan. Alice, we probably weren't anchor fans for the Fever, but we did have our season tickets prior to Caitlin because of you, candidly.
Thank you.
And our growing friendship, I was like, you know, I want to support that woman and what she's trying to do. So Alice and I signed up for season tickets, and then it just happened to be incredibly good timing is what we'll say.
Yes, it was. Yes. From a financial management standpoint, good call.
Yeah. The stock was cheap, and we now are in a very good blue chip stock is what I think we're going to own for long term.
Yeah, that's great.
Allison, something you mentioned about the science of motivation, I think in our day-to-day jobs, that's a sentiment that we often have to employ for ourselves, for our clients when markets or the economy may be more challenging. But if I could share a quick personal story about you and a moment that really struck me in a Fever game that told me there is something really special about the Fever and Pacers sports organization. But it was during Caitlin's first season. And the Fever had that incredibly tough, I think, 11-game stretch where they were playing every other day. It was tough opponents, on the road a lot, and they weren't winning a lot. And you had Caitlin and you had Aaliyah Boston in her second year. And it was a home game, another loss. And as I was exiting the court, which you exit in that area right alongside where the Fever players walk into the locker room, I saw you walk up to Aaliyah and basically embrace her almost forehead to forehead. And I couldn't hear what you were saying, but it was very clear that it was a hang in there, stay motivated. We're going to be okay. It was a touching moment from a fan perspective.
Well, thank you. It's, you know, she's a class act. And in that moment, she was just saying, I just want to win. And I just tried to encourage her that we all want to win. But this is true for your clients. It's true for each of you. It's true for me. I mean, we want to win. Nobody gets up and says, man, I hope I really blow it today. It's just not what we do. But you have to pick what you're trying to win at. So I think that's the challenge. It's so often, it was a lesson I had to learn in sports, is that people measure you by your win-loss record. And that's fine. But there's so much more to winning than the final score of the game. And I think breaking that down for my players, breaking that down for the front office of what are your metrics for winning? And then you measure yourself against that, and it becomes more controllable.
Yeah. Well, Allison, we're getting close to the end of our episode in time, and this has been incredibly fascinating. But I did read an interview of yours where you talked about the philosophy of to the hoop, kind of a foundational guiding principle in your life and career and the work that you're currently doing with the Marvella Foundation as well. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more about what to the hoop means to you?
Sure. It's what my dad used to say to me on the basketball court when I was in grade school. They bought me my first basketball hoop and my ball, and I'd go out and shoot with my dad. And my dad would say, take it to the hoop, kid. And he actually said that to me my entire life. You know, it's so even 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be going to a corporate meeting and I'd see my dad and be like, take it to the hoop, kid. What it means is have drive and be willing to take a risk. If you've got the ball in your hands and you're driving to the basket, you might get fouled. You might miss a layup. Like, these are tough moments. If you shoot from the logo like Caitlin and you miss, nobody criticizes you because very few people can make that shot. Your fans, when you're at a basketball game, if somebody misses a layup, you're like, you've got to be kidding me. I could make that shot, right? Like, it's risky. So it's having drive, being willing to take risk. The thing I like about taking it to the hoop is it means you have the ball in your hand. And I like having the ball in my hand. And sometimes it means I'm going to take the shot. Sometimes it means I'm going to fake my defender out and pass it to a teammate. But it gives you the opportunity to be strategic, which I'm a big fan of, and to make decisions. And so to the hoop just means that I don't think my dad was really trying to sketch out a strategic approach to life for me and when I was in 3rd grade in the driveway, but he did, because that's the mantra that rings more in my head is, when I take on new challenges, when I say yes to things that maybe I don't have the natural capacity or competencies for. So I have to learn more and work harder at something than maybe somebody else. It's the to the hoop mantra that says, have drive, take risk, take the shot, be willing to miss the shot, and have the ball in your hand.
Thank you, Allison. And pretty applicable to the stock market and investing as well.
One other thing that I want to just interject and get some further insights from Allison on, and it's relevant to our team name of the 3 C's. Allison, I think you throw some C's out there from time to time in every aspect of your leadership journey. What are your 3 C's? Ours are clients, colleagues, and community, and trying to be a great teammate to each of those. What are your C's that you've incorporated throughout your career and life?
Yeah, I think the first, thank you. I was happy to see your 3 C's too. When Tamika Catchings and I started together at the Fever, we came up with a strategy of how do we create a championship culture? Not a championship team. That wasn't our job. That's the coach's job and the player's job. But the culture, that's what we could own. And so it was commit, compete, and contribute. And it starts with a personal commitment. Sometimes in sports, there's this, it's almost like this double standard. So if I'm in ticket sales and my team keeps losing, then it's not my fault, because if my team would win, I could sell tickets, which is not that that's untrue. It's just that's not the commitment to doing everything you possibly can do to win at what you're there to do, ticket sales. We put together a great ticket sales team, so I didn't have any complaints, but this is what I saw in sports in general. So committing to be the best person you can be every day on your job, what's in front of you, control your controllables, as we say all the time, right? What's in your control circle. Compete, what are you competing for? And so that's important because, I was never competing for the win on the floor, on the court. I could compete for goodwill in the community and to try and find the Lauren Snyders out there that says, hey, I know we're not the best team in the country right now, but we're working on it. Would you come join us as a fan? And would you sign on? I could compete for that all day long and casting vision. So that what could we compete for that made sense? And then contribute. Where's our give back? And that contribution, when I turned 30, I said, okay, I know a lot of people get new words every year with their vision boards and they have a word. When I hit 30, I'm like, contribution is going to be my word. And it will be the word for the rest of my life. Where can I contribute to the greater good, to individuals? And so we tried to bring that to the Fever of where's our contribution? How do we give back to the community? And so we felt like if we hit those 3 C's right, we could create a championship culture. And it seems to resonate and be applicable really across the board.
Wonderful. Well, Allison, we cannot thank you enough for spending some time with us, sharing your story, insights. It's really fascinating. As I said, we could talk to you all day, but thank you. We appreciate it. Dan, Lauren, thank you both for joining me. To our listeners, thanks for joining us for 3C Money Matters. We'll catch you next time.
I do want to say one last thing, Allison.
I know what it is.
From the 3C group, I would like to say so long, farewell. Peter's saying goodbye.
I was waiting for it, Dan.
You knew it was coming.
I did. I liked it.
Thank you all for 3C Money Matters. We'll catch you next time, and so long, farewell.
This broadcast contains the current opinions of the host and are subject to change. The broadcast is provided for informational purposes only, is not a complete analysis of every material fact regarding any company, industry, or security, and should not be considered investment advice or recommendations. Investors should obtain professional advice before making investment decisions. The information has been obtained from sources considered reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and diversification does not ensure a profit or protect against loss. All investments carry some level of risk, including loss of principal. Baird is not a legal or tax services provider, and you are strongly encouraged to seek the advice of the appropriate professional advisors before taking any action. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of a fund carefully before investing. This and other information is found in the prospectus and summary prospectus. For a prospectus, please contact your financial professional and read it carefully before investing. This broadcast may not be reproduced without express permission of Robert W. Baird & Company Incorporated, member SIPC.